Professor T.N. Srinivasan, Dr. Raghuram Rajan, President of the Institute and RBI Governor, Dean Dr. Maithili, Mr. Pandit, distinguished guests, members of the faculty, staff, and students, graduating students and their parents, media, and other participants. Let me begin by extending a cordial welcome to our chief guest, as well as Governor, and all of you at the convocation of IGIDR. Today is another milestone that IGIDR as deemed university has achieved. It marks the 11th convocation of the Institute. My congratulations to all the students who will be awarded the degrees today. We are fortunate to have with us this morning our chief guest, Professor T.N. Srinivasan. In fact, when we contacted him, he immediately accepted to deliver this year's convocation address. I am grateful to him for this. He is not new to IGIDR. He was in IGIDR for quite some time in the initial years, in the late 1980s, I think, doing computable general equilibrium modeling. Now it's my privilege to introduce him. As you know, he is one of the top economists in the world. In the academic and policy circles, people respect him for the rigor, sound theoretical and analytical work in his research. Also, he has been consistent in his views on economic policies in the in the last 50 years or so. Even in the 60s, 1960s and 70s, along with Professor Jagdish Bhagwati, he recommended for ending license laws and advocated for economic reforms. Presently, he is Samuel C. Park Junior Professor of Economics at Yale University and visiting senior fellow at Stanford University. Formerly, he was professor and later research professor at the ISI, Indian Statistical Institute, Delhi, during 1964-1977. He has taught at numerous universities in the US, including MIT. His research interests include international trade, development, agriculture economics, and microeconomic theory. He has written several books and research articles on these topics. Some of his books are Reintegrating India with World Economy with Suresh Tendulkar, Frontiers in Applied General Equilibrium Modeling with Jessica Wallach. He has also worked on various issues relating to GATT and WTO. His another book is 8 lectures on India's economic reforms. He was awarded Padma Bhushan in 2007. He is fellow of the American Philosophical Society, the Econometric Society, and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He was named Distinguished Fellow of American Economic Association. So we are proud of his achievements. On behalf of the Board of Management and the entire campus community, I extend a warm welcome to Professor Srinivasan, to IGIDR, and to this graduation function. I also welcome Dr. Raghuram Rajan, whose achievements in the fields of economics, banking, and finance are well known. This is his first convocation as chairman of the Institute. Turning to IGIDR, over the years, the Institute has established itself as one of the well-known and high-quality institutes in the country and abroad. Its eminence derives in a large measure from the efforts of its faculty, staff, and students, as well as continuous encouragement and support of the Reserve Bank of India and its successive governors. So I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Raghuram Rajan and Board of Governors for their valued support and continued guidance. So our vision is to continue excellence in teaching and research and reach greater heights in future. We are aware of the challenges, and we have to do much more to compete and collaborate with the institutes in India and abroad. In fact, in the Silver Jubilee conferences last year, many eminent economists mentioned that IGIDR should aspire to become one of the top premier institutes in the world in the next 1 decade. Like earlier years, the progress on publications, research projects, conferences, and capacity building programs this year has been satisfactory. So we started the Foundation Day lecture. Dr. Abhijit Banerjee from MIT gave the third Foundation Day lecture last year. IGIDR faculty has also received recognition on several fronts, has reflected in major assignments, members of different government committees, and in receiving awards and fellowships. We also started outreach programs like training for RBI officers and refresher courses for college and university teachers as part of our outreach program. IGIDR has a strong teaching program spanning a diversity of topics in both economic theory and applied economics. Since its recognition as a deemed university in 1995, it has been conducting its own doctoral program, and further, in a major initiative, it introduced an MSc program in economics in 2003. In addition, it is our effort to maintain an overall atmosphere at the institute in which the students hailing from multidisciplinary backgrounds and different sections of the society are made to feel at home. IGIDR is well known for emphasis on academic excellence and favorably compares with the leading institutes in the world. Our teaching program is designed to acquaint the students with the most recent advances in theoretical economics, besides aiming at improving their analytical and computational skills. For example, the master's program attempts to develop a perspective for an intelligent understanding and interpretation of economic problems. It will be useful for students when they go out in involving research and policy making. For example, economic theory and economic modeling will be useful for empirical work. And the students, however, should not limit only to models and formulas when they go out of IGIDR, because sometimes the policies are formed by your own judgments. For example, there is a debate about the determinants of inflation. Now GDP growth is low at less than 5%. Inflation based on consumer price index is around 8%. So what are the policies needed to contain inflation? Some economists say that monetary policy is not effective when inflation is dominated by food inflation. But RBI may say monetary policy can influence inflation based on their judgment on various parameters, including price expectations, fiscal policy, supply response in agriculture, global economy, oil prices, so which may determine interest rate fixation. So this also happens to other policies of the government. For example, when I was fixing the agriculture prices in the Commission for Agriculture Costs and Prices, CSCP, in the Ministry of Agriculture, there was no fixed formula, although cost of production was the dominant variable. But we also take into account world prices, domestic market prices, and some other variables in making judgment about fixing minimum support prices. Also, the policies in India in future have to be in tune with the aspirations of the new generation, because the new generation want equality of opportunity rather than the rights-based approach the government has been following. So people want more goods and services with quality. The expectations of new generation have gone up. Government needs to get out in some activities. Therefore, radical changes in the institutions are required to improve governance. So the policies, therefore, should keep in mind for increasing the equality of opportunity rather than just rights-based approach. So turning to IGIDR, since the last convocation 1 year back, we had several activities during our Silver Jubilee celebrations last year. First, we had an international conference on development. People like Professor T.N. Srinivasan and other eminent economists all over the world attended. The quality of the conference was appreciated by everyone. The Silver Jubilee celebrations have continued throughout the year 2013 with the lectures and 8 more conferences on different topics. So we are going to bring out several books based on papers presented at these conferences. Now I turn to the degrees awarded. Since its inception in the late 1980s, the Institute has awarded 81 PhDs, 77 MPhils, and 157 MSc degrees. So I may add that out of this, every year I tell that out of 22 MSc students who are getting awards, 50% are females and 50% are males. In fact, in first year MSc class, we have 63% females. So we have a high gender imbalance in favor of females in the institute. So we are proud of this imbalance in favor of females. So I'm happy to inform you that our students have been remarkably successful in getting placement both from academic institutions in India and abroad, as well as from leading corporates, government organizations, and financial institutions. In spite of global financial crisis and the Eurozone problem, India's low growth this year, the students were upbeat regarding placements, as there was a demand for IGIDR students in various sectors. This year, 19 out of 21 students got good placements, which is certainly a remarkable performance. There is already a large and vibrant network of IGIDR alumni in academic institutions and the corporate sector, and we have very active alumni association. In fact, tomorrow we are going to have alumni meet. Finally, I take this opportunity to extend once again congratulations to the scholars who will be awarded the degrees at this convocation, and I wish all of them success in all their future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Dr. Dev, Dr. Rajan, Dr. Maithili, and Dr. Pandit. It's a great pleasure and an honor for me to be asked to address the graduates of IGIDR on the joyous occasion of the 11th Convocation. I congratulate all of you and wish you the very best in your chosen future career. I would hope that some of you would choose to pursue a career in teaching and research, be it at home or abroad. Without an adequate and continuing supply of great teachers and researchers, innovation, rapid and sustained growth, and ultimately the welfare of the people at home and globally are not possible to attain. So I strongly urge some of you to take on the task of fulfilling this great need. The role of your teachers and you, the students, in the process of generation of knowledge is best described in the mantra on knowledge or vidya in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Although the knowledge to which the mantra refers is the deep one about the nature of Jivatma and Paramatma and the relation between the two, I claim its spirit is also the process of education and accumulation of knowledge in general. Let me first cite the mantra with apologies in advance for my mantrahinam. I won't recite the Prayaschitta sloka fully, but understand I offer an apology in advance for my any mantrahinas. The mantra goes like this: Acharya Purvarupam Antevasi Uttararupam Vidya Sandhihi. A cryptic and literal translation would go like this: in the process of generation of knowledge, teacher is the first component, student is the second component, and knowledge is the third component which binds the other two. In my liberal interpretation rather than translation, the spirit of the mantra described knowledge as the end product of an interactive process of exchanges in the classroom among gifted and learned teachers and attentive and inquisitive students, each motivating the other in transmitting, receiving, and adding to received knowledge through further research. I am confident that having done your adhyayanam under gifted gurus in the rigorous Pathashala of IGIDR, you are all well equipped to face the challenges at home and abroad. Join me in thanking your gurus, their gurus, and all those in the Guru Shishya Parampara collectively by saying Gurubhyo Namaha. I was daunted by the task ahead of me of talking to you on something that is at once relevant and topical, and at the same time provocative enough in inducing you to use your professional skills in improving the welfare of all the inhabitants of our beloved Bharatavarsha, with its boundaries Himavat Setu Paryantam. After all, the objective of public policies, as Kautilya long ago said in describing the duties of the king in Arthashastra, has to be Yogatshema, which encompasses both Rakshana, or protection or security of the people, and Palana, or good governance of their good governance. The objective of Yogatshema of people is what would be characterized as an intrinsic objective or an end in practical philosophy, as the Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy puts it. It is to be distinguished from instrumental objective or means whose attainment facilitates the attainment of one or more intrinsic objectives. Of course, this distinction is not rigid. An instrumental objective could at the same time be intrinsic objective as well, as for example, provision of universal primary education, which is an end in and of itself, so that it is intrinsic, and it is also a means for the well-functioning of our democratic system, so it's an instrument as well. Yet, the distinction is useful to keep in mind, if only for the reason the temptation to deify instruments such as rapid growth or liberalization of international trade as ends in themselves is almost irresistible. I'm sure your gurus have warned you against this all too common temptation. In preparing myself for today, I read the addresses of two of my predecessors, the one by my good friend Vijay Kelkar at the 6th Convocation, and the other by my friend, also college mate for 6 decades from Loyola College of Madras, C. Rangarajan, at the 9th. At Loyola, Rangarajan studied commerce and I studied mathematics. Vijay characterized himself as a policy economist and succinctly spoke about the key economic policy issue of fiscal reform, in particular about the desirability and urgency, still it is urgent, of enacting a national goods and sales tax, or GST. The topic being quintessentially of the calm waters of microeconomics, Vijay could draw on its settled and almost universal and eternal verities. At points in his address where he recommended a sensible and wise course of policy action, I thought he sounded almost like the Purohita in a Vivaha ceremony at the time of Ashirvada, who wishes several good things to happen to the couple and asks the elders in the audience to bless them in that regard by requesting Mahanto Anugurannantu, please bless them. I felt like an elder in the audience responding to the Purohita's call by saying, Tatha astu, so be it. The only thing I missed in Vijay's address was an analysis of our myriad subsidies and tax expenditures, most of them of a non-merit kind. They still require a thorough re-evaluation from a social cost-benefit perspective. Merely ranting against one of them, namely tax expenditure on gold imports, as my distinguished friends Amartya Sen and Jean Drèze have done in their most recent book, is not enough. You can't stop just ranting. You have to provide an analysis. I hope some of you will undertake the task. Rangarajan, as you know, is an outstanding all-round economist and econometrician and chairman of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. He is also a former governor of RBI. He was therefore well qualified to speak on his topic, some issues on central banking, and in particular about monetary policy, which is a macroeconomic policy. With apologies to Raghu, This meant he had to sail on the choppy and turbulent waters of macroeconomics, which in my view is a field in which there are no eternal verities upon which to draw, and the shelf life of any theory or model is usually very short. There is no agreement among macroeconomists on a theory with solid microeconomic behavioral foundations. As we all know, as of now, there is no agreement on a causal model of global financial crisis, notwithstanding the early warning by Raghu about the accumulation of the shocks to the system. Whether the enormous expenditures undertaken in the US did avert a global depression or simply threw good money over bad with little or no stimulative consequences is still being debated. Even yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw a column by one of the very distinguished macroeconomists about this. In our own context, again, Governor Rajan, rightly but retrospectively, dismissed our own stimulus as it was not only not needed, but worse still, it sowed the seeds of our current slowdown. I wish it had come before the stimulus had been undertaken. In a while, I will argue that the available macroeconomic models, including those anchored by RBI researchers, are largely, if not entirely, formulated in the context of economic structures of rich Western developed countries. India is a poor developing country with an economic structure very different from theirs. For this reason, the features and findings of the Western models are of limited relevance to India. Rangarajan, in his address as well as other speeches and writings, has argued that inflation control has to be a major, if not the dominant objective of monetary policy. Governor Rajan titled his recent speech on February 26 as Fighting Inflation and made the case that in order to generate sustainable growth, we have to fight inflation first, thereby laying down a temporal sequence in the formulation and implementation of policies for achieving the twin objectives of attaining and sustaining an appropriate rate of growth of real GDP while maintaining growth for suitable price index at an appropriate level. I would put the words suitable and appropriate within quotation marks to indicate in determining what would be appropriate rates of growth of real GDP and for the chosen price index, and the suitability of a price index, chosen price index as a metric for inflation involve both theoretical issues and empirical considerations on which there can be and there are differences of views. Indeed, I will be drawing on Rangarajan's and the governor's statements, and also importantly on the recently released report of the expert committee chaired by Dr. Urjit Patel to revise and strengthen the monetary policy framework. Urjit got his PhD from Yale, so if there are any faults in the report, I have to share the blame for not having trained him appropriately at Yale. Rangarajan referred to what he said on an earlier occasion, and I quote, "In a broad sense, the objectives of monetary policy can be no different from the overall objectives of economic policy.